Shogun is basically Game of Thrones without the dragons. I am not kidding. It's literally one of my favorite shows. When Game of Thrones season 4, when it was at its peak, that's what's going on with Shogun. It's just the writing, the acting, the plot is just top notch. Not to mention cinematography, color grading. I mean, obviously that's why we're making this video. And pro tip, if you want to watch it in the highest quality, there's something, a little caveat that I figured out, which is insane. Watching stuff on Hulu, the actual app, versus watching Hulu stuff through Disney, completely different experience. Disney, much higher quality, you'll get Dolby Atmos and you'll get Dolby Vision, whereas sometimes same shows on Hulu will be playing in SDR and no Dolby Atmos. Shogun was shot on Arri Alexa LF and Mini LF, and when you watch the show, you will notice right off the bat muted tones, and there's a lot of emphasis on earthy tones. The greens, the browns, the sky. Those are the colors that are prominent because back in the day we didn't have LED lights, RGB lights, any of the noise pollution that we see today. It's set in between 1400 to 1700, I believe, so it's like through the Renaissance age. It's really captured through color grading. It's graded by Alodi Ichter. I am so sorry if I'm mispronouncing your name because I know how it feels. Nobody gets my name right the first time. And if somebody knows how to pronounce it properly, drop the phonetic spellings in the comment section below. So the next thing that I would want you to watch from her is the movie Air from Amazon Prime. It looks so delicious and she absolutely killed it. Before we jump in, just a friendly reminder, the Labor Day sale on Kazi's Toolkit ends tonight. And instead of just telling you why you should get the toolkit, let me share some of your experiences. Tone said, I've done a project with Qt, can't go back 100%. Tommy said, bought it yesterday and could not be more impressed with the results I'm getting from it. Agatha said, Qt Look DNA has saved me at least third of the time I usually spend on grading. Khalid said, I've tried third-party plugins, but this one is extremely different and a real game changer in color grading world. And these are just few of our many users that just cannot stop raving about it. This is the perfect tool to get any Hollywood look in minutes, regardless of your skill set. Currently, we're running a special. Use the coupon code on the screen to claim your offer. Ends soon. If you enjoy this type of content, do me a favor, smash the like button, subscribe to the channel, and let's roll the intro. All right, here we are, and I'm so excited to be attacking this show because let's just get right in. First thing that I'm going to do is I've created a group clip so I can drop on a few things that is going to help us evaluate what we're trying to look at. So I'm going to drop this on and use my Qt charts. This is the best utility DCTL out there right now that helps you analyze your image, and you're going to know in 1 second why it's going to be so useful, especially when either you're doing a reaction video or, more importantly, if you're trying to create a certain look. This gives you the most amount of information you need to attack that. So I'm going to call it Qt Charts. We're going to leave it here. And it's only $97 if you want to pick it up. Link is in the description. You can check it out. You can also download the free demo and play around with it. If you do decide to get this, you will get 20% off on the next 2 products from the toolkit, just an FYI. All right. And then here, I'm going to apply, my cat is screaming outside. You guys won't be able to hear him because I will have noise reduction applied, but it's really funny. So we're going to drop on color palette, and then we're applying this on a group level. So if I go on my clips, now it's applied to all different shots, right? All of this. And if I go to my Qt charts, by the way, if you want to learn more about like how group clips work, there's going to be a link in the description to the video and up top. So check that video out. And if I'm in my Qt charts and if I turn on false color, it is applied to all the different shots, right? So we can just basically save us like a bunch of different steps than doing it individually, especially because we're going to be using it in this manner to like test out our shots. So first of all, if I just go here and let's start with our first shot, what do we see? So this color palette is telling us our shadows, midtones, our highlights, and then this is a combination of all of them, right? I absolutely love this. This is obviously free. It comes with Resolve, and I love color palette because it just gives you the entire story for the shot. Because what we get to see here is there are barely any true blacks. Even this is like super dark, like navy blue. And then outside of that, everything has like that like cyanish blue. And we can see it in our vector scope. Obviously, we can also see it in our colorized waveform. And that's exactly what it's telling us right here. But what's really interesting to see in this shot is what's happening with our hair. This is not black. What's happening with our beard? This is not black. What's happening with the white in his eyes? It's not pure white. And that's something that I've been trying to instill in all of you guys that watch my channel, that color grading is so much more than color correction. So color correction would be this, right? If I go here and if I turn on my highlights neutral, it will tell us when things get to a point where they are pure, like whether highlights or shadows. So if we were to go here and I go in my HDR offset and start moving this around, right? Basically, what I want to do is I want to make this image as neutral as possible. And you can see as I go here and I'm making this image neutral. So what I want to do is like, let's just say if we do something where like, look at the whites, like look at the grays, like our highlights are getting as clean as possible. Okay. So now if I go here and turn this off and look at this shot, and if I go before and after, you can clearly see like the sky, an overcast sky is going to look like this. And we can even see our vector scope, what's happening here. And we can see it in our colorized waveform and even in our parade, like how colors are getting even and how we lifted so much in our reds than the actual grade. So another thing that you can learn from this is like how much room you have to play with, even if you're working with Rec 709 image, let alone if you're working with log. So look at like how much information we pulled out, right? Like at this point, I can go here and I can go under saturation and I can pull the saturation back to something like this, so where it doesn't look crazy. And now I'm looking at the vector scope. This image to me is looking pretty neutral. And if I turn on my highlights neutral, it gets to tell us that. And that's why like this tool is so important. Well, where is my skin sitting now? My skin is sitting where it's supposed to be. So most of it is, you know, in okay. And then some of it is green, which is okay because with Asian skin tones, they tend to sit in more of like the olive side. So, you know, a little bit of green is totally fine. So we're seeing that our skin is looking good. What about saturation, false color? So like we haven't really messed with saturation at all. And one thing that you will notice with this entire show is that, you know, they used muted tones and their focus was more on the greens and browns, like earthy tones. They like really put a lot of emphasis on that. And that makes the most sense because think of it, you don't have a lot going on back in the day, right? Like there are no RGB lights, there are no LED lights, car lights, street lights, things like that. So what do we got? We got our sunrise, our sunset, our daytime, and our grass and our ocean, and we got our browns, right? Like our dirt. So they're like really playing with those colors. And then how you get a mood out of it is by creating a very strong look, which is what we're witnessing here. So this would be like your natural look, Rec 709 look. Look at this, like our palette is looking so clean. And then this is what they went with. And again, if I go here, now the white in the eyes is white. Now the hair is gray. Okay, the beard is gray. And now if I go here, it's not the same, right? So I want you guys to like burn this image into your brain to know that color grading is not about doing the right thing. It's serving the story. It's going where we want to go, okay? And it's stylizing your film, your narrative, or whoever's project you're working on. It's so much about that. It is so much bigger than doing the right thing, playing by the book. One of those things that I feel like is just very eye-opening to look at and really give yourself permission to like what's really happening. And even if I go here and now look at like what's happening, and if we go to our false color, we see that majority of the image has a lot of breathing room. Like with their blacks, they kept it close to like the bottom, and I saw that throughout the show. But on the high end, like the highlights are very protected because like look at our craziest highlight is sitting somewhere around here, like right there. And if I come out of it, so it's like there's so much room to play with, right? Compared to like, I don't know, if I go in my gain and if I like raise it up, like, I mean, I technically can go up this high and I'll be okay. I'm looking at it here, right? In my waveform. And it's like, I really can go this high. They're not doing that. You know, they're giving it a cinematic feel like where everything is protected. And the entire show was graded in this manner. I felt like the midtones and highlights were very gentle. And then the shadows is like where they like basically brought everything together. Let's move on to the next shot. Oh my God, like one of my personal favorites. And one of the things that you have to realize is like, this is like my favorite type of color grading where it literally feels like a painting. So you either have like, so these are very monochromatic looks, right? Like we're going to go in one quadrant. So like right now we're living in like, you know, bottom right. And now we're living in top left, right? So it's like all warm tones and just like, look at how beautiful the skin tones look and how the entire image just kind of melts into each other. And you can see the same thing here, all cooler tones, shadows, midtones, highlights. Here, all warm tones, shadows, midtones, highlights. They're going there. And then it's a very specific type of warmth, okay? Because like most of the time you'll see warmth that would be something like a little bit more on the red side and something like this, right? So like now the skin tones are proper because if I go here and if I hover over, let's see, display qualifier. And if I go over here, you can see it in my vector scope that like we're right on the money. But then if I do this, now all of a sudden it's like, look at where my skin tones are. If I go here, they're so orange and yellow, but like that's what's creating this magic, right? It's a painting. It's much more than just like doing it the right way. And if I go here and turn this on and we look at our false color, we get to see like how the black levels are pretty strong. And this also gets to tell you about the vignette too, how that's coming in. I mean, obviously the image is pretty dark too, but like you can just feel like there is like an oval right here. And then there's the darkness right here, darkness right here, darkness right there. And we can see that. Beautiful, beautiful palette. One of my favorites. And then where is she sitting? The perfectly exposed skin tone will be sitting around 0.45, right? So she is about 2 stops under, like right here. And we can see that. And that's perfect because it's like nighttime. It's pretty dark. And then like the highlighted areas are about 1 or 2 stops over, which makes perfect sense. Beautifully lit. I mean, this show was just, my God, just mind blowing. Okay, let's look at her skin. So majority of her skin is still sitting in okay, and then some of it is sitting in green. Some of it is in magenta, which is perfectly fine. What about our saturation levels? I personally feel like this particular shot is one of the most saturated shot in the entire show. We can even see it in our vector scope where it's sitting. And, you know, we are getting in like a 1.0 zone right here, just around the edges of these lights. And once again, you know, at nighttime, everything is lit through lanterns and stuff like that. So it's just warm light, nothing else. Like there is no color separation because it's just warm lights. So they're running with that and they're staying very true to it. The skin tones are sitting somewhere around here and we can see there's a lot of color in the skin tones. And it's just created effortlessly through using a monochromatic scheme and just keeping everything in this top left quadrant. And then what's happening with our highlights? I mean, our highlight neutrals are looking pretty good because there is like, you know, pure black and we can even see it in our parade. Like, look at how these colors are sitting. They're pretty even on the bottom end. And we can even see it in our vector scope, how this is like touching in the middle. So it's getting pretty close and that's what we get to see on the edges. So that is true. And that's another beauty of like, you know, this tool right here, because if you're working on a commercial or something like that, and you really need to nail your clean highlights or clean shadows, you can use your highlight neutrals and like just nail it every single time, shot to shot. Moving on to the next one. This one was particularly very nice because what I noticed is that during the day,
that's when everything becomes pretty balanced. And we can see it in our vector scope. Like it's as balanced as it's going to get, right? Our overall image is really well balanced. Like this is, like, look at, like it's pretty even. Like this, that's what jumped out when I went over here, right? Our highlights are looking pretty clean, like right here. And then they always had a little bit of like teal going on in the undertones, and we can see it right here. And that's what's creating that color separation. But the thing that's very interesting about this shot to me is if I go under my false color, you guys get to see in the most visible fashion how the vignette is working. I mean, just look at it, right? So we can even hide our legends. I always wondered, like, I mean, do I even need to have like this hide legends thing? But like, finally, I can see the use. Like we turn it off and it just is so much better because now we can see the entire image. And if I pull back, we can clearly see like an oval created like this right here, right? And then this area gets dark. This gets like shamelessly dark. And if I come out of it and if I just punch in, like nobody can tell me that this is like natural, like just because there's not enough light in this area and that's what it looks like. It's a pure vignette. And that's another beauty of like this particular parameter, false color, that it can really help us get to the bottom of it. The whole idea of like these utility charts and color palette and stuff like that is just to like really nail what creates this image the way it is. So undertones are what, like somewhat neutral, right? Like not bad. Midtones are more on the teal side. Highlights are more neutral. And then these charts will help us with our overall contrast and things like that. Because if I just come back here and look at what's the total range? So we're starting from here. Our shadows are here. What's the max? We go all the way to the top, whereas like these windows are. But what about outside of that? What's the hottest point? Well, outside of that, the hottest point is like this right here, which is somewhere around here. Okay, makes sense. So basically, really, we're dancing from here to here, and then we're leaving some room up top. And obviously, this is just like completely cooked, so it's going to come off that way. That's fine. But these are the ranges that they're playing with. So again, this really helps us with building our entire shot. Like, so, okay, most of the magic is happening between right here, 0 to like 512-ish. That's where majority of the magic is happening. So this is where the contrast needs to be if you're trying to like mimic something like this. So let's move on to this shot now. And what I loved about this one is, first, they're trying to accomplish that it's early morning and it's cold. And how do we see that? Like, look at our vector scope and how it just like nudges to the right, just a little bit, because the whole mood can change if I go in my HDR palette and I just like bring it up and I put it right in the center. And if I just do that, I just like was looking at here and moving the image. And if I just do before and after, and you can see how my whites got whiter, right? So like my image actually got properly balanced. Like, look at this. How much blue is in there before, and now it actually got pretty balanced. Like, look at what happened with the blues came back and everything got lined up, right? And we can see it in our vector scope. Is it the same juice? Is it the same thing? I don't think so, because this is what makes it look like it's cold outside and it's early morning. And then it's also even selling the underexposed shot, because if I do this, then I gotta bring the shot up at least here, about like, you know, maybe 3/4 of a stop. So even if I do 0.75, 3/4 of a stop, I really have to do a whole different thing. So now you're thinking like that, right? Like, think like a colorist. Like, if you're gonna go with a little bit of more of a balanced shot, then that means it's brighter outside. And if it's brighter outside, then make it brighter. Okay, compared to this. These cooler tones work if it's that dark, because this, what is it? It's like 5:30 in the morning, 6 o'clock or something like that, right? Like, that's where my brain is going when I'm looking at this. Obviously, it helps that my background is in cinematography, so I can like connect the dots because I've shot during those times and like I know what the light will look like. That's why we have all this assistance, color palette, our scopes. We need to have a good understanding of all of this and bam, 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 pick it up. You saw like how I got here, and I just go ding, 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 check, 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 good. This is good, right? Like, because if a beginner intermediate person is like working on this shot, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to go in here and they're going to raise the shot up to something like this. And then they're going to go here and they're going to bring the gamma down and they're going to do this whole dance, right? Like, you know, they got to like lift the shot up because it was just like too dark. And they're going to do that. Like, oh, I want to see all this information. Like, they killed it, right? Like, I mean, it's cooked. I don't need to see here. That's okay. I don't need to see like the detail in his hair. That's okay. Like that's gone. The other thing about having darker scenes like that is that's where the meat is. Like this is where a lot of the colors live. Like that's where everything is like just so meaty. Like look at all the colors here, the skin tones, everything. The brighter you make it, the more washed out it's going to become. So if there is a chance and if there is a time and place to kind of stay a little under and really add some punch, take that opportunity, go with it. I mean, just look at where this entire image is living, right? The brightest part of this image is barely half to a one stop over, which we see right here. But the rest of the image is living between 3 to 5 stops under. Where are our colors here? We barely have any colors. Like, I mean, just look at this. So all these areas are neutral. They're 0.3. 0.3 is pretty neutral. Even like the skin tones are around here. And then some are just absolutely neutral. Like this is like 0.1. So barely any saturation. We can attest to that. Like, look at where the entire image is sitting, right? And then the most saturation we see is this right here, and some areas in 0.6, but majority of the image is 0.45. So you gotta like look at the majority of the image. So the majority of the image lives between these two. It feels right to the period piece between 1400 to 1700. I think that's the time frame for this show, the Renaissance age, I believe. It's very authentic and it's very true. Let's move on to this shot. So very different, right? Sun already broke through and it's like a little bit later in the day. So now we have these, oh, I mean, just silky, silky, silky smooth, right? We don't need to worry about this area. So like, let's just kill it. A lot of it is, I'm sure, done through lighting, but then also probably through color grading too. Like, let's just only focus right here and then boom, just take it out. So my eye goes window within a window. The brightest part, obviously, sun is out. We're looking into it. So it's going to get brighter because if you don't make it bright, especially when you're looking at the sun, usually those grades just tend to look super over-engineered and it looks really bad. So don't be shy. Like when you see an actual sun, when you're pointing at it, keep it up top. Keep it as close as possible, like where they're keeping it. The thing that you tend to see with this show is that I love the golden highlights. Like they just like lived in this area, like boom, boom, right? Like in this area right here. They didn't really go up and explore this right here. They stayed, majority of the stuff like stayed in this area. Again, very true to those earthy tones. Like they're just living in these browns. Mind-blowing how good it looks and how soft the contrast is. Let's not look at the brightest part. So the image is living between here all the way to somewhere around here. So you see like, we really have like, 4 or 5 stops of just like fun. And that's the very gentle contrast that we see here. Because if I like look at this, these guys are backlit. So ideally, they should be right here, but they're not. They're lifted. They're sitting right here. And some of it is 0.35. That makes no sense, but it kind of does. It's early in the morning and I'm buying it. If we look at our sat false color, the theme continues. Majority of the image is going to live between these, maybe here. But this is like majority of our image, right? Like it's living in this world and we get to see that. If you are working on a show or a commercial or music video and you want to kind of just like kind of lock in your overall saturation, this tool makes it really easy to just like turn it on and see what's going on and like find those issues because saturation is really hard to spot. Contrast is the easiest thing. I should say exposure is the easiest thing when it comes to shot matching. Well, this is too bright, this is too dark. Boom. Anybody can pick it. So match it. Contrast becomes a little tricky because you're like, oh, why is this shot looking a little different than this shot? Oh, it's just a contrast. Like crank the contrast. Now we're pretty close. Good. And then the hardest thing is saturation because that's just one of those things that you're always kind of going like, what's going on? You're always kind of tilting your head and just kind of going, I don't understand. Like what's really happening? Well, this just makes it black and white. It's like, okay, dude, this scene is going to live between these 3 values, 0.45 to 0.75. And then that's that. Just boom, 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 like global saturation, right? And like just keep everything shot to shot. And now you're matching it just like that. If we go to our highlight neutrals and if we go here and if I go to what do we need to do? Like, let's see if I just kind of like put my image somewhere around here, kill this, come back. Our highlights are getting pretty white. It's getting pretty clean, but what the hell happened to the image? Like this is a painting I can hang in my office, like right here, and I can just look at it and get lost in the beauty of it. Whereas this is just like, like, you know, it just makes me want to shrug my shoulders. Like that's just the natural response. Moving on to this shot. This one like stuck out to me so hard because what's happening here and how much saturation is being pulled into our highlights. I mean, like, look at the yellow in our highlights. This is 100% a color grading choice. And it's just something that I feel like a shot like that is very important to have in your gallery still as a reference, because there's going to be a time when you're creating a monochromatic look and you just want to kind of go extreme. This is going to be magic, because remember I told you guys that they're really, really living in this world, like when it comes to warm tones, and I'm here for it. This is just so good because, again, normally if I were to go in my gain and kind of start pulling that, like most of the time you'll see this. You'll see 100%, I'm telling you, you'll see like this sort of warmth, like these tones right here in your highlights, not this. And it's so saturated, right? I like to grade stuff that's like very pushed. And that's why I get so much critique. Anybody and everybody, every single person that follows me to learn from me knows that I've been grading for 14 years. Just come out and give free advice. Like everybody just tells me, oh, like, you know, this is just too hard, too push, too this, too that. I mean, what the is this? Like now they'll come up with their new excuse and they'll be like, in this context, it kind of works. This is the choice that they made and they went there and it's amazing. It looks so freaking good because where else do you see this? It's just really easy to go here. And especially if I were to use something like, I'm going to drop my DCTL saturation control and let's make this Rec 709. So it's proper. And that's another beauty of like all my tools because they are content aware. So you can choose the right color space, whatever it is that you're working in. So you're not locked into like one specific profile. So low, mid, and high sat. So this is how it's broken down, and it's using spherical saturation model, which is like way more sophisticated than, you know, your YRGB saturation that is available in your primaries, or even like HSV, which everybody loves, like spherical kind of spanks HSV. So you guys are going to find out why. By using my saturation false color, I know that this area is like super saturated. And if I want to please my audience and everybody's just, it's too saturated, I want to pull this down, I can just go in my high sat right here and grab it and start pulling it down. Look at what it just did. It did not affect anything else. And it just affected that. And it pulled it out, right? And now if I go here and if I turn this off and look at it, and we do before and after, like look at how soft and gentle the effect was without like nerfing anything. Somebody I'm sure here is thinking, oh my God, this is amazing. This looks so much better. I don't think so. I think this looks way better. But if you're going to do it, then do it this way. Like you just saw what we did, right? Because if I go and I create a new node and hide this one, and now if I just use my regular saturation and I try to dial that back, and let's just say we save this, and then the next we use our sat control to do that. So if I go here and try to achieve the same result, because what I'm trying to do is I'm just trying to like really pull this down from here, right? And if I just use my global saturation, look at what we're doing with the rest of our image. Whereas here, like if I turn it on and off, everything else stayed put. We just grabbed the craziest areas and we pulled it down. So the effect is going to be very, very different, and it should be. Let's check it out. If I go here, this is with like regular saturation, and then this is with our sat control, DCTL. And like, look at how much meat we still left in our image. So the result is very, very different. And then this, we can go here. We can turn on highlights neutral, and we can come here. And again, I can just, actually not this. And then I can just like look at this image and try to put as much of that neutral tones. And now if I see, that's why it's just so epic to have that, because now you look at the whites. Look at how white this image is. And like how, you know, we got there. It got pretty clean. I mean, look at the waveform, right? So we just pulled all of that out. Look at the vector scope. Okay, you learned to correct your image. Good for you. That's like the base step. Now where are you going to go? This is where color grading starts, when color correction ends. Where, I should say, color correction ends. I'm going to turn off my color palette for a second. And the thing that I wanted to show you is how they're using the lens distortion. So that's another thing that a lot of people are like, oh, fake lens distortion, right? Like people are just like lose their freaking minds over that stuff. You can't tell me that all of this distortion is lens distortion is coming from like an actual lens. I know it for a fact. So there is like a vignette that, you can just feel if I punch in here, and it's like how, this area has that lens distortion. And then here we have this lens distortion, and then everything in the middle is like perfect. And we're going to see it especially here. So look at how this is completely perfect. And then we have like crazy amount of lens distortion, anamorphic lens distortion right here. This show is graded in Baselight, not DaVinci Resolve. So whatever technique they're using to create that, I guarantee it that a lot of it is added in post. This is just has been a trend, and it's really cool. They do it in all the John Wick movies. And most of the time when anamorphic lenses are used, I feel like it's just kind of enhanced a little bit more in post. And it's a very stylized, very unique effect. Very 2024. It's in right now. One of my favorite shots. It just to die for. Look at the waveform. Look at the parade. What's happening? Look at the vector scope. Like what the? Look at the histogram. When was the last time you saw snow that looks blue? If I go here, and if I'm just like, all right, let's make this snow white. Right? So now we see our waveform is looking white. Our vector scope is looking pretty good from here to here. And if I go here, hey, are we looking, how are our highlight neutrals? They're looking pretty good, right? Where's our overall saturation? Of course, like the image is super, super neutral. So it's going to live here, which is perfect. And now if I look at this shot, I mean, is it the same shot? Not even close, right? Like, what is this compared to what this is? And even like how much it breathes. Because another thing that you would do when you have a shot like that is like, you will just be tempted to grab your blacks and pull it down, right? Like I just want to go in my log wheels, and I want to go in my log wheels, and I want to take my shadows, and I want to just pull it down, man. Just pull this down because the image is going to pop. Not the same. This is painting. This is just digital grading. Okay? It's very, very different. And let's look at our false color again. And you see the theme continues. So that's another very interesting thing to see in this entire show. Whether our people are silhouetted, they're always around 0.25, between 0.15 and 0.25. They're always just lifted that much. And then through vignette, more of like the contrast is created where things could be down to 0.5, 0.05. But majority of the image is like our main characters are like around here. So a very interesting thing to kind of see from shot to shot. This shot, what's more important is like what's happening behind the window right here. So that's what we're focusing on. So now this dude is going to get cooked, right? Like he's gone. Basically, the exposure is following the order of importance. So cool. You can clearly see the oval vignette. Like look at how this is falling. This is falling, going dark, dark. And then that's the main focus right here. That's what we're looking at. And then this is our last shot. And what I wanted to show you here is staying true to what they're trying to do here, which is like, these guys are in the dark. So to really portray danger, let them live in the dark. I can see a light falling on her, but then she's going in and out. There's enough light here to create an atmosphere for them to come out of the background. And if I go to my false color, that's exactly what's happening. If anything, even the color separation is like a good amount here, because like look at like we're 0.9. Like, I mean, this is really juicy. And there's a very few times in this show when you actually have color separation and it's like very naturally created. If we just go here and we look at all of these shots, let's go to a light box view. Let's make these bigger so we can look at them like that. And if we just like look at this entire story, right, to what's happening, like we can just see so many different palettes, but at the same time, warmer tones will always be like look at this, right? They're always going to be similarities. And then what happened is like when I was watching that show, I started relating it to like that time of day. So anytime it was like midday, I would just know it's midday. early in the morning, early in the morning, early in the morning, early in the morning. So like I related it to that. And then this, right? Like these warm tones a little bit later. And then anytime they're indoor at night, of course, it's going to be lit through like lanterns and stuff like that. So it's going to be like this warm palette. And just like look at the vector scope, like what's happening. Or if I go from here to here, like look at what's happening, like how faithful and true that is. I mean, look at these colors. And then if I go here to here, like look at how faithful that is, right? And then if I go from here to here, like look at how faithful that is. That's my assessment of this show. And I personally feel like you must watch it. Like you must watch this show.
So what did we learn? We learned that teal beard is okay. Visible vignette is okay. Exaggerated lens distortion is okay. Blue snow is okay. Underexposed daytime is okay. This is color grading, guys. Elodie Ichter is a painter. She's not concerned with making sterile, natural-looking, boring looks. And if you also want to become a painter, then do it now by getting Kazi's toolkit.
Currently, we're running a special. Use the coupon code on the screen to claim your offer. Ends soon.
If you found this video helpful, it will mean the world to me if you smash the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you have any content suggestions, drop them in the comment section below. That said, I will see you in the next one. Peace, fam.